Two Japanese destroyers arrived in Manila, Philippines on Saturday to prepare for an exercise with the Philippine Navy in the West Philippine Sea.
Japan has agreed to lease military aircraft to the Philippines in another sign of deepening security.
The seas around the Philippines aren't peaceful anymore. They're a stage. Cameras, commanders, and capitals are all watching. Each day, more naval vessels steam into the area. Picture the scene. US destroyers cleaving the waves, Japanese task groups scanning the skyline, Australian ships threading the shipping lanes, and European frigates showing up on the map. They're all converging on one place. The Philippines has switched roles, from paradise postcard to geopolitical spotlight. Once known mainly for sun-drenched islands, warm hospitality, and hard-working people, it's now a frontline state in a rivalry that stretches across oceans. That glossy tourist image doesn't capture the full story anymore. Why does the world care so much? Because the South China Sea isn't just another stretch of ocean, it's a superhighway of global commerce. Trillions of dollars in goods flow through these channels every year. Energy, food, electronics, raw materials. Whoever controls the sea lanes controls a major artery of the global economy. And sitting squarely in that artery is the Philippines. Beneath the waves lie enormous stakes, oil and gas pockets, fisheries that feed millions, and seabeds rich with resources. That's the magnet pulling navies into the region. At the heart of the tension stands China. Over time, Beijing has staked near-blanket claims across the sea, built up artificial islands, and hardened them with runways, radars, and missiles. Courts have largely rejected those sweeping claims, but the construction and expansion continue, leaving neighbors like the Philippines vulnerable. This isn't a one-nation problem. The United States, bound by treaty obligations, has publicly pledged support for the Philippines. Allies and partners have answered the call too. Japan, South Korea, Australia, and even distant powers such as the UK, France, and Canada have sent ships to signal one message loud and clear. Freedom of navigation matters, and the global trading system will be defended. These deployments aren't ceremonial. They're a show of resolve, a declaration that critical sea routes won't be closed by force. The Philippines isn't abandoned, and that's why fleets from around the world keep circling. In short, the archipelago has become a linchpin for regional stability and commerce. Back to the core issue, disrupt these passages, and the economic shock would be instant and brutal. Roughly 1/3 of global trade moves through the South China Sea. Stop or slow that traffic, even briefly, and factories shut down, supply chains choke, and markets wobble. Tankers hauling oil, freighters packed with food, and electronics, they all funnel through this choke point. The fallout would be immediate and far-reaching. China's legal claim, the so-called 9-dash line, overlaps the waters of the Philippines, Vietnam, Malaysia, and others, covering thousands of kilometers. In 2016, an international tribunal rejected those broad claims, but Beijing pushed forward anyway, fortifying reefs and creating military outposts. For Manila, this fight isn't merely about law, it's existential. It's about securing fishing grounds, safeguarding energy prospects, and protecting coastal communities. Filipino fishers have reported harassment, blockades, and forceful removals from waters that have long fed their families. Energy projects are stuck in limbo, frozen by Beijing's pressure. Every diplomatic or economic pushback chips away at Philippine control over its own waters. And the fallout isn't just local. If any power can seize these sea routes by force, freedom of navigation everywhere is suddenly on shaky ground. That's why Manila's partners have sent ships, to keep the shipping lanes open and to push back against unilateral muscle. The South China Sea has effectively become a test of international law versus raw coercion, and the Philippines is caught squarely in the middle. Standing tallest among Manila's backers is the United States. For decades, Washington and Manila have maintained a close security relationship dating back to World War II, and today, that alliance matters in a way it hasn't in generations. Under treaty commitments, the US is obliged to respond if Philippine territory is attacked, which helps explain the surge of American vessels and aircraft in the neighborhood. These are not casual port visits. They're a show of deterrence designed to make clear the Philippines will not be abandoned. Digging deeper, the stakes are massive because the South China Sea is a global crossroads. Nearly 1/3 of world trade slices through this corridor each year. Oil, grain, semiconductor parts, finished goods, close or choke off that route, and the ripple effects reach every continent. Supply chains stall, prices spike, and entire industries feel the shock. China's claim, symbolized by the 9-dash line, overlaps the maritime zones of multiple nations, including the Philippines, Vietnam, and Malaysia. In 2016, an international tribunal rejected Beijing's sweeping assertions, but the court ruling didn't stop China from building up reefs into fortified outposts, bristling with runways, radar, and missiles. For Manila, the fight is existential. It's about defending fisheries, securing energy prospects, and keeping coastal communities safe. Local fishers report being pushed out, blocked, and harassed in waters they've relied on for generations. Energy projects have stalled under continual pressure, each new incident whittling away at Philippine sovereignty. That's why allies have responded with a naval presence. These deployments are aimed at preserving the principle that no single country should be able to close off critical sea lanes. And at the center of that effort is the US-Philippine Security Partnership. Recent agreements have expanded American rotational access to Philippine bases, not permanent bases, but a system of shared access that enables joint training, rapid reinforcement, and a stronger deterrent posture. For Manila, that's reassurance. For Washington, it secures a pivotal role in maintaining regional balance. US warships also conduct freedom of navigation operations, deliberately transiting disputed waters to challenge excessive maritime claims. Each transit carries the same blunt message: international waters remain open, and unilateral territorial grabs will be contested. No single power will be allowed to choke off the world's vital shipping routes. America's presence here isn't just muscle. It's a full-spectrum partnership: joint exercises, humanitarian relief, shared intelligence, and training programs that are helping modernize the armed forces of the Philippines. In short, the US is both shield and collaborator, making it clear Manila won't be abandoned. But Washington isn't acting alone. Two of Asia's most capable militaries, Japan and South Korea, have stepped up beside the Philippines. Japan has recast its defense posture, building one of the region's most sophisticated navies and donating Coast Guard cutters and radar systems to bolster Manila's maritime awareness. Japanese warships now operate in tandem with Filipino and American fleets, reinforcing a collective stand for freedom of the seas. South Korea has become an increasingly important partner as well, supplying modern aircraft, surface combatants, and military training. Drawn from its own experience under constant threat, Seoul brings practical lessons and combat-ready platforms to joint drills, proving that the security of the South China Sea matters well beyond its immediate neighbors. Together, Tokyo and Seoul are sending a blunt signal to Beijing. These waters stay open, and attempts to seize control will have consequences. Both nations rely heavily on the shipping arteries that thread the Philippines, so letting one power dominate is not an option. Their coordinated activity amplifies the message: defending Manila is defending the economic future of Asia. Support reaches beyond the neighborhood. Australia has reinforced ties with Manila, dispatching ships and aircraft to patrol and train alongside Philippine forces. A practical recognition that threats to Asian sea lanes ripple to Canberra's door. Even European capitals are getting in on the message. France, the UK, and Germany have sailed vessels into contested seas, not as courtesy calls, but as statements that the South China Sea matters to global stability. These deployments are more than optics. They are a worldwide chorus declaring that international law and free navigation will be upheld. All of those deployments would mean little if the Philippines itself weren't building capacity. And that's exactly what Manila's doing. A quiet but steady overhaul of its military. After decades of underinvestment, the armed forces of the Philippines are finally getting serious upgrades. New patrol ships, advanced fighters, improved submarine capability, and modern radar networks. The Coast Guard is being beefed up to protect fishers and enforce maritime rights. New facilities and upgraded bases are being readied to host allied rotations and joint operations. Crucially, these acquisitions and exercises are being knitted into interoperable training with US, Japanese, Australian, and Korean forces, turning once isolated units into a cohesive regional defense web. Year after year, the drills get more complex, and Philippine troops are being trained to run advanced systems and operate side by side with partner navies. Everything we've described, new alliances, hardware upgrades, non-stop drills, points to one driving force. Over the past decade, Beijing has pushed aggressively into the South China Sea, erecting man-made islands, building runways, and stationing military kit where none existed before. For the Philippines, this isn't a distant headline. It's happening on their doorstep. Chinese Coast Guard and maritime vessels regularly patrol waters the Philippines claims, intercepting boats, shadowing local crews, and choking off fishing grounds. Every maneuver raises tensions a notch. This dispute isn't about flags on a map. It's about control of one of the planet's most critical trade arteries. Beijing's sweeping claims, backed by the 9-dash line, run up against international rulings and the sovereignty of multiple states. Manila has insisted on the rule of law, and that stance places it squarely on the front line of a larger contest. Why does each visiting warship matter? Because those deployments aren't ceremonial, they're a message in steel and radar. The world is watching, and the signal is clear. No single power gets to lock down these sea lanes. For ordinary Filipinos, this geopolitical drama is painfully tangible. Harassed fishermen lose livelihoods. Families feel the squeeze when access to resources is blocked. What looks like a distant strategy on TV becomes a daily hardship at sea. Yet there's another side to this story. Seeing Allied fleets arrive has stirred pride across the islands. For many citizens, the presence of US, Japanese, and Australian ships is a reassurance. The Philippines is not standing alone. That boost in morale coexists with worry. People fear being drawn into a clash between great powers. The mood is complicated, and understandably so. Here's the big picture. Manila today is at the center of a global strategic chessboard. What happens in these waters will ripple outward, impacting trade, testing international law, and shifting the balance of power across Asia. The choices Philippine leaders make now will determine whether these seas become a zone of cooperation or a flashpoint for conflict. If handled skillfully, Allied support can strengthen defenses, attract investment, and protect citizens. If mishandled, the Philippines could face pressure from both sides of a geopolitical struggle. Either way, this tiny archipelago now plays an outsized role in shaping the region's future. So why are so many navies sailing here? Because the stakes are enormous, and because the Philippines sits where geography meets geopolitics. The story unfolding in Manila matters far beyond its shores. Decisions made here will reverberate from ports to boardrooms around the world. If this breakdown helped you understand why the Philippines is suddenly the center of global attention, do us a favor, like the video, subscribe for more explainers, and drop a comment. Tell us whether you think Allied support will prevent conflict or make tensions worse. We'll keep tracking this story and bring you the developments as they happen. Stay tuned.